Hey everybody. Oh man. This is Welchless Thinking and I'm Welch Kincannon. Welcome to the channel. Those of you who've already been here for a minute, I appreciate you guys. And for all my new subscribers or any new viewers, you like where my thoughts are going, go ahead, sucker punch the subscribe and or like button, and of course share the video. This, and then again, thanks for your support as always. What I have today is it's a deep dive into Casino, the movie Casino. I mean, how fitting is it, right? You know, if you're a fan of Kendrick, well, more so, you know, Baby Keem, you know, he just dropped an album named Casino, and you know, I was like, I've watched this movie so many times. It's time to do a dive, because I have some thoughts that is probably gonna be controversial, but I think that as I break it down, I think people will understand a great deal as to why. If you watch the movie again, you'll understand it. I think people will really understand it a great deal. So you know, get relaxed, because this is going to be kind of long. I'm hoping not too long, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like it's past 30 minutes, that's for sure. So it's gonna be kind of a long video, we'll see. So let's get to it right now. Casino. Okay. Now I will say right off the bat, you know, the movie Casino is one of my favorite movies of all time. I feel that all three main characters should have won an Oscar for their respective roles. They made the story believable, even though the real story is different from the movie. But, you know, I digress from that. What will this be about? It's going to be about the characters. It's going to be all about the characters, specifically the main ones who left us captivated the entire movie. For one, many people laud Sam Ace Rothstein, Robert De Niro's character, a serious, highly intelligent, precise gambling expert handicapper, as the hero and wronged. However, I will, and I guess will break down why he is no better than Nicky Santoro and Ginger McKenna, who were made to look like the only bad people in the movie. And this is the genius behind Martin Scorsese's films. The character development is amazing and layered. You gotta watch out for the signs, words, and actions. Alright? So, Nicky Santoro. So, Mr. Sticky Fingers Nicky is a made man from the Chicago outfit mafia, a crude, snarky, disrespectful, and extremely tough guy who's married with a son. He adores his son a great deal. His wife, Jennifer, seems to be a, you know, ride or die, but I don't get the sense that Nicky loves her as much as he loves his son with her. You know, her responsibilities seem to be to take care of the son, whatever bullshit Nicky wants her to do that's illegal. Nicky was nothing but drama. He was sent to Las Vegas, which he wanted because it was where all the action was, right? Come on. And he also loved the showgirls. He really wanted to be his own boss, knowing that the mafia outfit couldn't see what he was doing in Vegas. So besides watching Ace's back to make sure, you know, no one fucked with the quote-unquote golden Jew, he started making it known in Vegas to everyone who he is, who he was, and he was not to be fucked with. Now, I want to start with Nicky because some would say he is easily the baddest, quote-unquote, of bad guys in this film. He is also the easiest one to talk about in terms of character. So, with that subset, let's start with his wife. It's clear his wife, Jennifer, was a rock, very loyal, It's quite sad though, because she helped smuggle in diamonds for him in her hair, which she could have gotten caught up by security at the airport and been arrested for his BS. He had to befriend, she had to befriend Ginger. She probably didn't care to. Due to Nicky's connection to Ace, just so they got the lay of the Vegas land. She probably had to deal with Nicky's volatile attitude, abuse, and stubbornness, which can't be easy, of course. I do wish they explored a little character development with her, with Jennifer. She also had to chat on the phone with Ginger a certain way since the phones were tapped, just so Ace and Nicky can quickly speak to each other and or meet. Nicky didn't seem to take her anywhere. He was having a good old fucking time creating his restaurants, fucking showgirls, meeting and greeting Las Vegas elites, and gambling. Wifey was nowhere in the picture during these fun times, sans his fuckering with showgirls. Mind you, his wife is gorgeous, but, Nicky's a greedy fucker and a cheater. Now, Frank. I don't think Frank liked Nicky. Okay? Why do I say this? Well, Nicky flexed his muscle with Frank, although I understand in some ways why he did so. You're a gangster, quote-unquote made mobster who had to make sure his people are in line and let them know that he's with the shits and not the type you should ever go over his head or fuck with. By the way, disclaimer, there's going to be a lot of cursing. Alright? It's just what it is. I do naturally curse a lot, but come on, it's fucking Casino. Let's be real, alright? If you know, you know. Nicky telling Frank, right, he would have ratted by now, and saying the shit he had said prior to that when they were torturing Tony Dogs to try to get him to tell them who ordered the hit to Remo Gaggi's bar, the mafia boss from the Chicago outfit. Like, really, dude. Ugh. Alright, what a dick. No real faith in Frank. Okay? Even if he was joking, Frank didn't respond like it was a joke. He's like, yeah, thanks. But he did say some things before that kind of just led him to say that. Like, that's just wild. When Nicky decided to start sleeping with Ginger and Ginger wanted Ace terminated permanently, quote unquote, Frank didn't seem at all happy about it, but just went along with the program. And who could blame him? He was asked directly by Remo if, quote unquote, the little guy was sleeping with the Jew's wife, and he flat out lied and said he hadn't heard anything. He protected them all. What I'm calling the three bad main characters in the movie. By lying to the top boss, which could have gotten him killed. And by the way, side note, for all we know, it probably did. Remo could have sent Frank and others to take care of Nicky and his brother Dominic out in the cornfields to face his homeboy and take his ass out. Then once he got back to wherever, right, was killed by the same dudes who put Nicky and Dominic in the ground just for lying to him. It was telling when Remo stressed him to tell the truth. We saw Frank alive in the end, but I think had the movie went on, or if it was in the scripts at some point, Frank was killed as well. Or deleted, whatever. I got the sense Scorsese sympathized with Frank a little bit. But yeah, going a line to the top boss, which could have gotten him killed. All because Nicky needed to stick his ick with the D inside of Ginger. Even when Frank was beating Dominic to death, you can hear the frustration from Frank. Like, he was holding back how, he really felt until that very end of Nicky's and Dominic's life. He was sick of them both. Now, speaking of Ginger, Nicky's scazzy ass sees Ginger for the first time when Ace introduced her to Nicky and Jennifer, and he was in awe when he saw her. You could damn near see him plotting like, me not getting she from he, for real. What a dirtbag. So once Ace starts having problems with Ginger, getting her pimp boyfriend Lester beat up by Nicky's guys, Ginger runs to Nicky to complain. And I'm gonna get back to the scene later. Instead of Nicky saying, "Hey, let's discuss this with your husband together," or better yet, "Leave me out of this, I'm a married man," something to that effect, right? He relishes in the fact that she runs to him like he's a savior, and yet he was the one who was behind Lester getting his ass whooped. He didn't even bother to advise her that he was there, and it was his guys, just only telling her that Ace may not have known who Lester was. And Ginger quickly corrects him. So, Nicky just sits there, listening to her bad-mouthing his so-called best friend, by the way, and watching her. After her rants, he acts like this concerned, quote-unquote friend, telling her to ease up with the drinking and told her she was beautiful. So Miss Thang hugs him, then gives Nicky soft pecks on the lips at least 2 to 3 times. And Nicky does nothing, but has a strange smirk on his face, almost like he was restraining himself and uncomfortable at the same time, but reveling in the full adoration Ginger was giving him. And I got a side note, great friggin' acting by Joe Pesci here. To get across emotions on screen with the body language he showed was freaking incredible. I think people would appreciate that scene, just that part alone, because it was hella hilarious, but it was like, that is really, really gotta be really tricky to do. But I think that was great acting by him. So Nicky could have backed off immediately if his friendship with Ace was really that important to him, if he truly cared about him, but he didn't. And I'm going to get into that later. Later, he would come to regret, quote unquote, effing with this broad after she made it obvious to Ace she was plotting something nefarious, offing him. With Nicky, although Nicky made it obvious as well by even entertaining and being around Ginger. Okay? The fact that in the opening of the movie, Nicky mentions Ace and then Ginger, and I understand, they were the main characters and not his ride or die wife as part of him and his life, speaks volumes. So what? We got envy, power, greed, violence, and Ginger were the center of it all. And Nicky really wanted everything Ace had. I think he wanted to be Ace. I'll explain. The mafia bosses adored Ace because of what he could do for them that really no one else could all the time. He was always going to be protected as long as he kept, quote unquote, winning and making the money. I feel Nicky wanted that talent, that gift that, Ace had, since it was the best insurance policy in the mafia world. Nicky didn't have that. He was just the muscle and thief who followed orders. There's a high percentage of people who can be, quote unquote, a muscle, right? But there's a low percentage of people who are like Ace. It's rare. I also think Nicky wanted Ace's calmness to a certain extent. Nicky was impulsive, hot-headed, hard-headed, and stubborn. He always acted like he was the smartest man in the room. Ace as well. But he was also quick to violence, which can be perceived as weakness. Ace didn't have to be violent to be respected. People flocked around him because of his personality and, probably his style. Plus, he was running a casino, which Nicky wished he had that option. Now, back to the hard-headedness of Nicky. Nicky barely listened to anything Ace said. He warned him about the local cops and the Black Book, which was filled with dangerous criminals that, in essence, can get you banned from entering certain states and or premises. He warned him a few times, but no, never heeded the warnings. He just did whatever the fuck he wanted and then complained when shit hits the fan, leaving Ace basically like, I told you so. So, Nicky continues to double down on trash behavior because he still needed to, quote unquote, earn his words. Nicky then started to turn his back on a Chicago outfit, mostly because he wanted to do what he wanted and was tired of taking orders from them when Ace only had one order to comply with, and that was to keep making the casinos money so they could benefit from it. Other than that, he was his own man. Quote unquote. Quote unquote. Heavy on the quote unquote, his own man. Nicky wanted to be a boss, and seeing Ace come off like a leader in his own world, being rewarded, running a casino the way he saw fit, and was in contact with super elite individuals, he wanted that but more. Another thing that is interesting about Nicky is, for as much bravado he has, he carried guilt. Case in point, when he volunteered to go on some heist with his crew, he didn't like the people who he was stealing from looking at him, so he turned the picture frames he saw in their homes upside down so he didn't have to see them. It could be that he's religious, most likely Catholic. However, I think if any of his crew saw that action, they would have thought of him as weak. Straight up. I sure the fuck would have. I know that would be me all the way. That's insane. Especially when he told that beaut of a casino dealer at the Tangiers that, quote, if he had any heart, he would have been robbing for a living or something like that. Yet, yo ass can't rob a place with people's family photos staring at you? Punk behavior. When Ace and Nicky started falling out, Ace clearly was able to keep it moving as he had other friends he could hang out with. He didn't need the company of Nicky. Besides, he had his own life there before Nicky even arrived in Las Vegas. But to see the jealousy and clear attention-seeking behavior from Nicky was childish. Like, bro, you pretty much threatened the man's life in the middle of the desert, which you told him to go to. And you think he was going to look at you with warm eyes and greet you with glee? No way. Nah. Ace clocked you from that moment on and never trusted you again. A side note, I was told my guy, some gems only need you to do some fuck shit once and you're never trusted again. And speaking as one, myself, I feel like the coolness to which we move on, the way we move on from things, comes off like, it comes off mean and cold, but what the fuck are we supposed to do? Like, let people continue to treat you like shit? I for sure ain't one of them. But, however, not all Geminis are like this. And this is only if you believe in any of this kind of thing. So, it is what it is. Personally, we're all great and we're all horrible at the same time. It don't even matter the sign. And so, what does Nicky do, right? Mind you, Ace is ignoring him. Ace expected that he was gonna, approach him in some way, right? So, what does Nicky do? He goes to the Tangiers Casino where he wasn't supposed to be at all at that point since he was banned. Decides to play 21 table game and wanted his money and yada yada yada. But he was really there to get Ace's attention since the night before Ace didn't acknowledge him and his crew at that nightclub. Which is crazy. Then we have Nicky fucking with Ginger, and Ginger wanted Ace to be deleted, quote unquote. Nicky also wanted Ace erased. His life was spiraling out of control with the drugs and booze, and he wasn't the same quote unquote Nicky anymore. Not as strong, and was becoming sloppy, and part of that sloppiness was following pussy he desired, which was Ginger. He wanted to have her, and it inflated his ego so much that she ran to him for assistance. So he felt like a hero. So now he has the affection and attention from Ace's wife. He wasn't going to let that go. So these two coked up mofos decided to fuck with Ace, and Ace immediately understood what was happening. And again, Nicky realizing his mistake after sleeping with Ginger a few times, that Ace knows what they're up to, and after kicking Ginger out of his restaurant establishment for being demanding and then hitting him, he may be in a world of trouble with the Chicago outfit for sleeping with, quote unquote, the dude's wife. Once shit hit the fan, feds, knowing what was going on, partly because of Piscano, and started raiding Tangiers, his crew, and more. Nicky skips town to wait for the heat to die down. And it's crazy that he left his crew hanging and didn't have them with him, especially his right-hand man, Frank. Nicky showed how selfish he was, and I found it telling that Scorsese made sure, if it's not him, it was whoever who wrote the movie, you saw who got rolled up or, arrested from Nicky's crew. Nicky fittingly saw his demise at the hand of the one person who had to deal with his volatile, dangerous shit that put him in danger most of the time, which was Frank. That was no mistake by the writers. Lastly, Nicky blowing up Ace's car, essentially trying to kill his so-called best friends, was ridiculous. He allowed his jealousy, greediness, and paranoia to ruin his friendship even more, and he knew if he killed Ace, the Chicago outfit would lose a substantial amount of money. He tried to kill two birds with one stone, then have the audacity to come back from skipping town, thinking everything would be okay. All would be forgiven, even after everything he did. Surveillance of him kissing Ginger, trying to kill Ace, not listening to the boss back home anymore, and not asking for permission to make moves. The Chicago outfit realized their made muscle had to go. Nicky was not a savvy gambler, and his hustle game was only good when he acted as the muscle, but not as someone with the crew that knew how to properly hustle a casino without the, sheriffs noticing. You must be pretty bad for the sheriffs to notice, and yet many hustlers come in, do their shit, and leave. Hell, even the dudes Ace caught were doing their crap for years at the Tangiers Hotel and Casino. Years. However, Nicky was a great thief, like I said. So, in essence, Nicky sucked. But he wasn't wrong on a few occasions. Miss Ginger. Let's move on. Ginger is the most misunderstood character in the movie. Just like Nicky, she was made out to be the bad guy / girl, whatever, but there are things I feel people should have understood about her, and honestly, it says so much about our society and why some women deal with the shit internally and act out later in life, etc., etc. And how most people view women when they are not at their strongest and so on. Ginger's mission in life is money. A quote from Sam Ace Rothstein. So let's go ahead and talk about Ginger and why she is misunderstood before talking about all the horrific crap that she's done. Ginger clearly had trauma. Yes, she's a beautiful, statuesque, and smart woman. However, she was damaged. Very damaged. Lester Diamond. Yeah. Someone named that name is most likely some sort of hustler and or pimp, which he was both. He was a quote-unquote mooch and another selfish individual whose priority in life was to make money by any means, through girls and women, specifically Ginger. As he said on the phone with her when she just got married, he remembered seeing her as a 14-year-old with long legs. That's fucking gross. He was manipulative and wanted her to continue the grift within the marriage. Ginger clearly has been controlled by Lester, since she was a child. A child. We know nothing about her parents. However, I do feel there was a hint of pain. It's probably more than a hint. When Ace proposed to her and she asked Ace if he knew anyone who had a happy marriage, because she didn't. She looked on the verge of tears when she said that. It makes you wonder if her parents had an unsuccessful marriage or that they were in unsuccessful marriages. Whatever it was, being married frightened her. And I'm going to continue staying on this scene of Ace proposing to Ginger. Ginger was direct and honest with Ace that she wasn't in love with him, but she cared for him and apologized. However, Ace convinced her by using money and security so she can say yes to him. What's sad about that is it was mostly what she knew. It's mostly what she knew. It's all she knew. Be a hustler, use her feminine wiles, and get money any way she could. Lester, in essence, raised, quote unquote, her. And now the man who promised marriage to her, Ace, the guy who acted damn near holier than thou, was running damn near the same play on Ginger. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, Ace knew her background. For all his intelligence, he didn't invest in getting her mental health before having a child with her, who happened to be a girl. Ace just wanted her to be his trophy wife, parade her around in expensive clothes, and have her looking presentable and coiffed. All to make him look good. For all of Ace's posturing, he pimped Ginger out his own way. I will get back to his ass in a second now. Ginger did everything Ace asked for. Hustling high rollers, making sure the staff received huge tips so they can get specific drugs, etc. that's needed to make the high rollers happy and stay pretty. Ginger was a little girl trapped in a grown woman's body. It didn't help that the man who supposedly loved her, I'll say men, used her. Not to say she wasn't manipulative. Ace was as well. But she truly needed help, and I think she probably would have respected Ace more if he focused on that. I think she really needed someone to see behind the beauty, the brawn, and talent, quote unquote, and, try to get to know the real Ginger, who she really was. However, no one cared to learn. There was a moment she was happy to be Mrs. Rothstein because of the status she obtained from it. However, she knew it was all a farce and that she could never really escape her past. And she was right that Ace didn't love her. Her. I'm stressing her. He only loved the idea of her and what she outwardly presented to him and the rest of the city of Vegas. In some ways, he had her more under lock and key than Lester. And I will explain that later. Now for all the fucked upness of Ginger, right? Just like Ace and Nicky, she was stubborn, greedy, and liked to have her way. No, not by trying to get her jewels and money that Ace promised her. I'm going to get back to that later, but, again, using her allure and body to get what she wanted. Ginger knew that Nicky had a crush on her, which is specifically why she sought him out to complain about Ace after Ace asked Nicky to sick his goons after Lester. She didn't go to her dear friend, right? She didn't go to her dear friend Jennifer. I put friend, quote unquote, to complain because what could she have done in the long run? The long con started with Nicky because she knew she was going to eventually leave Ace and get what she was owed by him. Nicky was the right, quote unquote, right person to help her with what she wanted and was happy to do it. Well, because like I explained, he also wanted Ace gone. I'll say they used each other, but one of them really wanted to get in that puss and desired her way more than she would have ever desired Nicky. By the way, I want to point out the names I just realized. Nicky and Dominic. That's all. Dominic, Nick. Okay. Anyways. Super fucked up that Ginger cared so little about her friendship with Jennifer and started sleeping with her husband. Bad enough that, the man was rarely home and was sleeping around, but for Ginger to be that manipulative and selfish is unfortunate. I would like to think Jennifer went on to have a wonderful life without the abusive and controlling fuck that is Nicky. But I digress. Ginger doesn't trust Ace, and for good reason in some ways, but then says he's a Gemini, triple Gemini, a snake, something like that. And you see Nicky's face looking amused and low-key agreeing with her. I mean, the real life Nicky and Ginger were the sign of Taurus. Not surprised they've shared the same sentiment. And I laughed at the scene, and I still do, and always have. Why? Because these two were the biggest goddamn snakes in the fucking movie. The shit they were doing behind Ace's back, fucking each other and plotting to kill the man, was insane. The nerve of these two. Plus, what's interesting is when they introduced Lester, Ginger was wearing a snake-printed robe dress. She also wore an Emilio Pucci abstract snake dress when she walked away from a Mark, quote-unquote, she provided pills to while he was in the bathroom. In fact, Ginger wore a lot of animal snake print clothing. So I guess her clothing told us a story about her, if you catch my drift. And to top it off, Ginger attempted to kidnap their daughter, Amy, which is beyond foul. Horrible fucking mother, by the way. It wasn't just a kidnapping, it was the fact that Ginger would have her daughter around Lester the molester, who has been pimping her for years, since she was a kid. Unfortunately, she didn't see Lester as a bad guy, more like a fucked up parental figure, quote unquote. And yet, they checked into some hotel motel under the name Mr. and Mrs. Rothstein, so she was acting and probably hoping that her life would be rich and plentiful, but with Lester and not with Sam Ace Rothstein. Sadly, though, Ginger couldn't see that Lester was the bigger scammer in her life and didn't care about her at all, only cared about what she could do for him. During this messed up kidnapping plot, Ginger is chopping and snorting coke in front of Amy, which no child should ever see, and decided to tell her daughter, don't do this. Like that was responsible parenting. Wild and disgusting. Super infuriating. Yeah, horrible scene. I think Ginger envied her daughter a little, which is why she exploited her the way she did. Her daughter came into the world with money and a father, which is Ace, who purely loved her. Ginger clearly didn't care for her daughter's well-being and went as far as tying her daughter up in their home and leaving her alone. Drugs and alcohol were also the problem. I'm going to go back a little bit. I get the sense that Ginger and Lester would have tried to do what Lester did to Ginger when she was a kid to Amy. When she was a kid to her own daughter. Read between the lines. Even how Lester was speaking about Amy was telling, but the writers were careful not to be too obvious. Ransom, but also, if Ace didn't pay up, I'm going to leave it at that. After tying her poor daughter up and leaving her alone in the dark, she heads to Nicky's restaurant. Their plot was so bad because at this point, Ginger was numbing herself with alcohol. Nicky was getting sloppy and both didn't think Ace would figure out they were in cahoots with each other at this point and not just in a sexual way. Ginger hid behind Nicky, essentially, while furious Ace beams down at her as quietly as he could. Once they have their short argument when he finally got her home, which I will get back to that later, she leaves again, goes back to Nicky's restaurant to let him know what had happened. Nicky knew all of this was bad and it wasn't going the way he thought it would, and Ginger's like, just kill him already. When Nicky doesn't comply with what she wants, she attacks him. He smacks her and throws her out of the restaurant. Now, at this point, she's ruined both relationships, and she knew Ace would never look at her the same or forgive her. Now she wants her money and whatever else so she can go. So, finally free. She didn't even bother trying to get custody of Amy at that point. She was smart enough to know she would have lost that fight. That child within Ginger no longer had to answer to her other quote-unquote father. She had her money and more and was gone. Unfortunately, with that freedom came even more moochers, addicts, and users that ran through everything she had left, and her meeting her maker. And you know what? You never heard from Lester again. By then, he probably didn't need her. To him, she fucked up the biggest score they would ever have by leaving and divorcing Ace. Also, Lester may have seen her as washed up at that point due to the booze and narcotics. Yes, Ginger was a grown woman and could have helped herself. It's just unfortunate she couldn't and wouldn't get away from the same cycle and same type of people. She struggled to stay on a path filled with rules. She never met anyone who she truly trusted, and never met anyone who truly trusted and loved her. The former, sadly, for good reason. The cycle. Now, I'm cracking my knuckles, you know. Sorry if people don't like the cracking of knuckles, but this is about to get... Yeah. Sam Ace Rothstein. Yeah, I left his ass for last. Like I hinted earlier, Ace was also a bad fella in this movie. In this story, if you will. Many people see him as a victim. Just a caring guy who just wanted to run a square place and have his life nice and quiet, quote unquote. Bro, you work for the fucking mob. Square place? They were skimming. You were part of the shenanigans. Hell, you were ripping off motherfuckers all day and night because seeing anyone really, quote unquote, win was like losing $1 million. Mr. Rothstein, sir, you didn't like the whales that came through betting vast amounts of money and winning. So what do? Create a scheme where they are forced to come back to the casino and bet again and again and again until they lose all of what they planned. You didn't even like when they took free soaps and towels. Back then, that wasn't an anomaly. You were allowed to take these items. However, you're so cheap as well as needing to make sure all the money lost would go into the greedy pockets of you and the fucking mob. Ugh. And yes, the point of a casino is to keep people spending. The house always wins, right? However, people have brains, and if they aren't gambling addicts, some would stay away from casinos that are straight losers and won't go back to the establishment and will go to the casinos that have a higher winning output. Okay, let's start from the beginning. I apologize, I have a lot to say about him. So... Okay, Ace is an interesting character. You're supposed to love him. He seems solid. He had the right to be irritated with Nicky, but everything wasn't Nicky's fault or Ginger's. Ace suffered from OCD. Not fun if you're diagnosed with it. I know. There are many degrees of OCD, and Ace was up there in high level category. But you know what? I think he had OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which I think he had, with sprinkling of OCD. He needed to be in control. Hell, he told Stone he didn't want interference and wanted to run the casino, quote unquote, his way. On top of that, the dice had to be right, the chips stacked correctly, etc. to make it more interesting. Not one hair or clothing was out of place, down to his home. In some ways, he needed someone in his life to disorder his orderly life, a challenge, and saw someone who was not too different from him, which was Ginger. And I'll get back to her. And somewhat because of this diagnosis that he may or may not have known he had, this is all the messery this dude did. So let's start with Tangier's hotel and casino. Ward was an idiot, but was also scamming for the very people who wanted the mob out of the casino business and out of their city. When some slot machines provided people with the chance to win at a high probability, Ace lost his shit. I laughed because Ward said something even I said, even though I knew he was scamming the Tangiers and Ace. My boy said, people have to win sometimes. Oh, shit. Yes, that was funny and true. As I said before, Ace needed people to come to that casino to keep losing. This is why he continued to watch the casino even at home, with the freaking CCTV for crying out loud in his goddamn bedroom to make sure, quote-unquote, people weren't robbing him blind. Bro, you lost your shit on someone scamming from the casino, yet you were literally doing the same. Ace thought because he was this incredible handicapper in betting, where he rarely, if ever, lost a bet, got this shit down to a science, that he was better than many and of higher moral ground. And he wasn't. He was not. By the way, I'll be saying that last part a few times regarding Ace. Just watch out. Did I say this man said in the beginning of the movie that he was, quote unquote, given a casino that was legitimate, and that as a bookie and gambler, he had to always look over his shoulder due to being hassled by the cops? First off, you weren't given anything. Your job was to run the casino. You couldn't even say you were the boss. You had to keep changing job titles every blessed fucking week. And that casino was not legitimate. Okay, if you mean legitimate as it's an actual friggin' casino and not some faux shite, okay, you're right. However, nothing done at the Tangiers was legitimate. Yes, you're not wrong for getting the cheaters out, which kind of includes Ward, but Ward was tricky. He leaves, everything dies. Anyways, I understand all of that. The job had to do was to make sure, the job you had to do, was to make sure money in, a lot less money out, all for the bosses. However, the hypocrisy is hilarious, and again, you act as if you're above the cheaters, crooks, and skanks. Hell, you were under the control of the mob. You're there to make that money and not let the money make you. If you watch Players Club, you'll understand what I meant by that. You were no different from Ginger. You were being pimped, Ace. Just not sexually. You told Nicky if anything happened to the casino, it was his ass, not Nicky's. Yeah, glorified hoe who had no choice but to make sure your pimps were fat and happy and not giving any trouble. Now, let's add more onto the OCPD diagnosis. Yes, super gross of the cowboy sitting at the poker table with his nasty ass feet resting on it. For Ace, this was him wanting to remind Mr. Cowboy that he was running a high-end casino and trashy, nasty habits and actions was not going to be tolerated. I absolutely agree. Then him, then him weighing the European dancers who were off a couple or so pounds during weigh-ins. Oh my God. He was exacting in every fucking way. And yes, I know it's not an anomaly that dancers usually must weigh in, be measured, etc. to maintain a svelte look. How about Ace sitting behind his desk and so that his pants aren't wrinkled and to keep the seams crispy, he has his pants hanging in the closet with a few other items of clothes just in case he needs them. And the infamous muffins. Absolutely didn't blame him for his irritation here. The muffin he received while speaking with Philip Green looked dry and barely any blueberries in them. Obviously something was wrong in the kitchen. Could have been that the batter itself was uneven. But the chef's facial expression and single question was hilarious. Then looking at Ace like he was crazy. Another thing was he was so obsessive and fixated with his work, especially when the issue of not having a gaming license came to fruition. He continued to watch the news about it in his John Barrymore robe at night. Then in the daytime, he's seen in the same attire, smoking, and watching it again. I do find it crazy that he thought he would have a fair trial, at the time, and with all the heat coming down on him and Nicky and the mob, that wasn't going to happen ever. Even if he never got into it with the racist commissioner Pat Webb after firing Ward. They were looking for a reason to get someone who was working and or affiliated with the mob, and super sketchy past gone from their town. Mind you, this is a man, Ace, who pretty much enjoyed what he did. I think he thought he was some sort of comic book hero, a character with special powers, I guess. He worked 18-hour days, so he says, while Ginger enjoyed the best things in life. I'll get back to that one soon. No wonder the man had ulcers. Him gurgling his Mylanta. The smoking didn't help. So let's give Ace a break here. He was right about so many things. The number of warnings he gave Nicky was ridiculous. Nicky did say, "Do I have your permission?" when asking about moving out to Las Vegas, even if he was being sarcastic. I think he said it that way knowing Ace likes to think of himself as the boss in every damn near every situation. Nicky never wanted to truly listen to Ace because also, in Nicky's mind, he was quote-unquote over Ace. He was a made man, legit. Ace was just a gambler, impressive-ass handicapper. Ace had some paranoia for sure, but for good reasons. So when he was providing Nicky those warnings, he cared, but also knew his friend very well and knew he wasn't going to listen to him. So, reverse psychology probably worked. I think Ace wanted to keep Ginger safe. That's as far as I will go with how he felt about her. He called her a, quote, good fucking actress. Well, he was a good fucking actor himself. With mostly everyone. He was, for the most part, honest with Nicky. Alright, break over. Let's move to the jag-off Nicky stabbed multiple times with a pen. Now, you see, Ace walked in, and while the jag-off was speaking to the women at the bar, Ace and the women exchanged hellos, and he walked over to Nicky. You see, the jag-off said, "Who's that guy?" And Ace, seeing a pen on the bar counter, taps the guy on his back and asks him if the pen was his. Mr. Jagoff disrespects Ace, and Ace stands there acting confused and innocent when, of course, as a muscle, Nicky, here's what was said to Ace, takes the pen in question and goes to town on Mr. Jagoff's neck. So why is this scene important? A couple of reasons. Even though the interaction was innocent enough, Ace cuts in while the women are talking to Mr. Jagoff to say hi to them. It wasn't just a walk past kind of hi. He interrupted their conversation, and not saying excuse me, long enough to look at the women with his body slightly in between the women and Mr. Jagoff. And I think he shook both their hands. Looks at Mr. Jagoff and walks away. All brief but definitely temp checking and establishing dominance. Then he's all surprised that Mr. Jagoff snapped off at him. And yeah, it got him stabbed up, but for Ace to then say what he said after Nicky, to say what he said after, Nicky did what he did to him was hilarious. He was questioning, and he didn't say it, but it was like in his mind. He was questioning why Mr. Jagoff became so upset. Ace loves the innocent act. He knew his homeboy was going to lose his shit and didn't mind it at all. Standing there trying to faux stop Nicky at the end from beating the guy up further. Now fast forward to when Ace won an award and Ginger was all dressed in gold. By the way, the symbolism is insane. Such a trophy wife. He's standing in another room with Ginger, and they're talking and smiling at each other. A young dude comes over and interrupts their conversation to say congrats to Ace. He then looks to Ginger, grabs her hand, gives it a kiss in a polite, quote-unquote polite gesture, and compliments Ginger for her beauty, and Ace for being, well, lucky. You can see Ace was not happy about that, and once the dude walks away, Ace says, what balls on this guy, and then fires the dude the next day. Ace may not have done the hand-kissing gesture to the women at the bar who knew him and was wordy with them. However, it was damn near the same situation. The difference is, Ace wasn't as obvious as the young dude. I also think because the real Ace was not much of a looker, and of course, Robert De Niro is very handsome to me, that he didn't care for any man getting close to Ginger, which included Nicky. Can't really say I blame him. Let's continue with his Ginger issues, right? As I said before, he worked long hours, 18 to be specific, while Ginger enjoyed the perks. I feel this is why his ass never got to truly know his girlfriend/wife. How the hell was the relationship ever going to survive? Bump that. How was she ever going to grow to love him? As he said before, when you are never there, and when you showed that you didn't trust her by questioning everything she did. How does that make sense? Let's go to the beginning a bit. Mr. Rothstein, sir, you fell for Ginger when you saw her on those security cameras hustling, stealing from her mark. For first thought was, what a move. Your first thought was, what a move. And instead of doing what you have been doing for a while, getting security to kick her ass out or confront her about what you witnessed, ban her from the casino, and then kicking her out, you stare at her and fell in love, quote unquote. You, Mr. Rothstein, sir, saw how beautiful she was, then her hustling ways. Then she became your mark. Yes, I said your mark. Ginger didn't care about you or the Tangiers at that moment. She was going to keep it pushing. You chased her. Some would say you were the mark, but she didn't know you, your tastes in women, etc. You chased her because she reminded you of you. Then you found out a little bit more about her. And when I say a little bit more, not much. Then in barely 3 months, you want to marry her. Even she was thrown off. As she said, you barely knew her, and you said pretty much your words, pretty much you knew all you needed to know. Oh my God. Which is horrible, by the way. You didn't care to know more about her because her aesthetics and charming personality were more important than getting to really know and love her. Ginger told you the truth, telling you she cared about you, but was not in love. But just like you kept narrating about Nicky, saying he didn't care and he just didn't care, apply that to yourself. Even the way you proposed to Ginger was not special, and it centered around you. Quote, I do one better. I'm trying to marry you. Or some lame bullshit he said. Really, bro? Ginger is clearly a grand gesture, right? Kind of woman. Proposing by sitting next to her on the sofa, which isn't the problem. But it's you saying, I'm 43 and I'm not getting any younger. I want to have a family and settle down. Something like that. No real mention of her and or caring of her feelings. She even asked, while choking back tears, if he knew anyone in happy marriages, because she didn't, which is interesting, because since she met Jennifer, hung out with her, and Jennifer's married. Ginger probably knew Jennifer and Nicky weren't a happy couple, and I'll say even Ace knew that. You can't name anybody in happy marriages? That's wild. It seemed clear she was triggered by her past, probably her parents, and you sat there talking about trust and all this other shit. Pretty much salesman your way into her heart. When she told you she was not in love with you, you then started explaining to her about what love is, and then you pretty much threw money in her face when her next question was how she was going to be taken care of if they divorced. Red flag, by the way. And you got her to marry you by throwing money and jewels in her face. Ace, you were thirsty. The little you learned about Ginger, you used it against her when you were upset. Or she did something fucked up. Yes, she deserved all the smoke when it came down to kidnapping your daughter and having her around Lester, tying her up in the dark later, and then leaving her by herself. Then wanting to have you killed, but you chose her. You decided to procreate with her, knowing full and well she was impulsive. And, I'll say spontaneous. Right when you first saw her, you saw her hustling in full sight, then made the guy lose all the rest of his money. You would think that was a huge red flag, that she was, she made no apologies for it, unfortunately. She was who she was. Her past wasn't a problem as long as she kept it cute, schmooze with your antique-looking elites, players, movers, and shakers in town, and kept you abreast of everything she was going to do and was doing. Ginger was a frickin' trophy wife. The scene where she was in that beautiful gold dress was no damn accident by Scorsese. Then you saw the spotlight close in on Ace, which was really interesting because to me, it made me think at that moment it was all about him, and yet what he says about Ginger is supposed to be sweet and beautiful when it wasn't at all. He liked the way she, quote unquote, worked the room. If I decoded what he meant by everything he said, it was, I love the way she makes me look successful, rich, with phenomenal taste, and I can bag women like her. I'm a catch. No, Mr. Rothstein, you're controlling and boring. The best wife for him would probably be Elvira Hancock. Or maybe not, considering what I just said. And if you don't know who Elvira Hancock is, you should look her up. She's from another movie, another very famous movie as well. So Ace takes Ginger to banks with him, depositing quote-unquote shakedown money, jewels, etc., to show her he trusts her completely, quote-unquote, because somehow that shows love, giving her the only key that would get him back alive. By the way, where was her shakedown money in case she was kidnapped? When she had her jewels, he asked her, "Do I keep my promises?" Sorry. "No, sir, you do not." Near the end of the marriage, when Ginger wanted to leave you, Mr. Rothstein, sir, you flat out denied her what she was promised. At this point, she didn't do those crazy things to Amy, their daughter, and wasn't sleeping with Nicky yet. So a lot of shit could have been avoided, and you would have won custody of Amy had you just divorced her. Gave her the shit that she was promised, that you promised her, and let her go. At this point, she was overdoing it with the drinking and prescription drugs. Once she cut her hair, she became a full-blown coke pill-popping alcoholic and was becoming even more crazy, like someone who was trying to escape a stalker. Money kept her with you, not love, and you knew that, and that's why you didn't want to give anything of value to her unless she continued to pretend, quote-unquote, love you. The charade was important. The guy at the bank even asked you if you trusted your wife. You hesitated. Then you said yes and asked why. You spouted all that shit about trust, even going as far as asking her a few times, "Can I trust you?" And yet you didn't trust her at all. There was no trust in that relationship. And yeah, some may roll their eyes at me seeming to make Ginger into a victim. Like I explained earlier, she was someone who desperately needed therapy, and I think most importantly, someone who cared to truly listen to her and get to know her. When Ginger was laid out on their bed after the Lester Diamond beatdown from Nicky's crew, Ace was questioning her about his meds, which she is foul for taking his medication, and she lays there defending nasty-ass Lester, saying he didn't have to have him beaten up. When Ace tried to comfort her, she had every right to snap at him, seeing she didn't give a shit, and that he didn't care. Why? This fool said the wrong shit to her, saying, quote, "People look up to you in this town." If he knew her, he would have known that didn't matter. Ginger seemed to want genuine, quote unquote, like, see me beyond my looks and get to know me love. Since every man she seemed to encounter saw her for, just her physical attractiveness, she just continued to use it. Then Ace said, which was the infuriating part, "I know you better than you know yourself." Wow. You don't know her. You don't know her. Down to when you straight up told her after she was on the phone whispering to someone that she wanted to have you deleted, and you screamed, "You never loved me in the first place." You gaslit and lied to yourself. Ginger already told you she wasn't in love with you, and she never said she loved you. She said she cared about you. You literally thought throwing money at her, which she didn't have much control of, by the way, was going to, cure her of whatever trauma she was going through. That status and respect, quote unquote, respect in town would be the end all be all. Like that really would be the end all be all? No. She was already making money on her own and had more freedom, but not by a large margin, being that she was with Lester. But Hell, you brought over her clothes to the house. You bought the house that you bought for the both of y'all. So controlling. You didn't find a home with her. She had her own, and somehow her being with you seemed like she was in jail. Then you and your homie Nicky said to her that she was a quote unquote tiger and a toughie. When, again, you both didn't know her. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. And Ginger was the queen of knowing how to make other people feel good. She saw manipulation and fraud around her. She was part of it. She was a part of it. What was telling was that Ginger never agreed with what they said. Yes, Ginger was street smart, but she wasn't tough. She seemed to be in pain and did her best to self-protect herself, but wasn't very good at it by continuing to attract the same type of men. Even when she threatened to go to the FBI, she didn't even bother to snitch. All that yelling and threats, hitting cars and such, and nothing. She even came back to Ace after the attempted kidnapping because she's been tricked in her mind that Ace was quote-unquote safe, but also unpredictable, and she couldn't read him. She also came back after wishing Ace was deleted. The reason she left for good in the end was because she knew she fucked up so bad, messing with a mobster and all the irreparable damage she caused with Ace. She had no choice. Sam, excuse me. Mr. Rothstein, sir, you said to Ginger at the restaurant, who was sitting there either drugged up and or drunk out of her mind after she tied up Amy, you said, "And let you disgrace me." He made it very clear their marriage was more for him and, as I said before, to make him look good in the Las Vegas community. He truly didn't think his shit stank, but it did. You have a past, as you said before, and Ginger had a past. Let's be for real. Do you think the movers and shakers and elites didn't already know who the hell you and Ginger were? Of course they did. You both were like animals in a zoo, on display for people to observe, learn, and look at. Same with Nicky and those types of people going to this restaurant. It made them feel hip, important, and marveling at the fact they were so close to quote-unquote danger. Y'all were at the bottom of the barrel of society, no matter how y'all tried to present yourselves. Sadly, I'm not done here, Mr. Rothstein. Let's go back to when Ginger asked for the $25,000 you question her about. Then she gets annoyed, heads to the bank to get the money. Then she goes to meet Lester. You show up, berate nasty-ass Lester, which is fine. But then you tell him, if you ever come around to take her money again, bring a pistol or something like that. Wait, her money now? Not too long ago, you were damn near making her beg for the money. Your money. Once again, it's all about the front, making it seem like the marriage was a joint equal affair rather than one-sided. Ace, you held all the cards. Remember, she couldn't get her money and jewels when she simply requested it at the divorce lawyer's office. Ginger literally had to go to the extreme. Once you gifted those things, it was hers, and she could do whatever she wanted with them. Unfortunately. In the end, you saw her for what she was by throwing her past in her face. Yet you hated it when you were rejected for a gaming license, knowing that the county commissioner and others in town didn't like you and who you were. Besides, the books you brought to the hearing were cooked to perfection. You worked at a casino that was skimming. You thought you were the elite, and you even threw demeaning insults at Ginger like she was beneath you, which was telling, by the way. I think you were seeing Trudy, the host of the Tangier show that you had. Another woman working for you. They were smart in how they did that, not making it obvious in the film, by the way. Speaking of Ace's crap, which reminds me, the Chicago mobsters wanted Ace to do things nice and quiet, right? After the fallout of the gaming license. Well, because Ace felt like a big part of his power was taken from him, he decided to do that boring ass Ace's High show. Ace is not much of a talker, which was clear. Ace's ego, however, was horrible. The reason he really wanted to be on TV was because of control and needing that back. Also, he needed adoration and respect again. It was slipping at this point. So, Nicky was right about him at the desert. And yes, Ace wanted Nicky to be gone. And yes, Nicky was a nuisance. However, Ward was fired, and that's when everything went downhill for Ace in the Tangiers. Ace's real love was the casino. It was not Ginger. Ace set himself up as a victim, right? Made an all-in gamble and lost big with Ginger. Already knowing who and what she was from the very beginning and expecting anyone to feel sorry for her. Feel sorry for you on that end. And I do think that's hilarious. So, I'm going to move on to some last thoughts and observations. I found it very interesting that Ace set little Nicky boy up to the Little League with a coach. With a coach who was a Metro intelligence cop. Nicky shrugged it away, but I always thought it was Ace in some ways wanting Nicky to get caught up or to be or be watched. I could see it another way as well. You know, the front, make it look like Nicky was an upstanding member of the community and just wanted to show these cops that Nicky, them and they as a whole were just good people that wanted normal and quote-unquote square and quiet lives. I do understand to a small point why Ace didn't want to give what he promised to Ginger after all the horrible fuck shit she did. I get it. However, that man didn't inform the sheriffs that Ginger's scazzy ass left their daughter by herself, tied up in the dark. He did nothing like that. We also didn't see him go back to the lawyers. The crazy thing is, if they did go to divorce court, Ace most likely would have had to provide Ginger what he promised. Nevada, at that time in the 1980s, had a no blame kind of clause, which spouses don't have to prove cruel acts or adultery, which Ginger was guilty of. Also, marital property and debts were equally split up. To make it worse for him, he already had money hidden, which forensic accountants, if hired by Ginger, and no doubt she would have done it, would have found not only the money, who knows what legal tax problems it would have created for him if she wanted to be even more despicable. He should have just given her the jewels and the $1 million that he promised her and be done. And make sure there were no, witnesses to that so she couldn't come back for more. Now, side note, Nas, the rapper, if you don't already know who he is, seemed to be a fan of the movie Casino. He released a music video for the song Street Dreams from his album It Was Written, released in 1996. The music video had some usual suspects from the movie itself, such as Frank Vincent, who played Frank. Frank is supposed to be Nicky, quote-unquote, in the video. Hype Williams, the director of the video, he really was going for that cinematic feel and look. He's considered one of the best music video directors in modern history. Recently, Nas has partnered with Resorts World's New York City in his home borough of Queens, and the commercial for it once again pays homage to the movie Casino. And, Nas is one of my favorite lyricists. But I digress. I bring this up because if I could have a word with Nas, I would tell him this. Being inspired by Sam Ace Rothstein is not a flex, as Ace was not cool or a good guy. I used to think he was cool when I was younger, but then as I continued to watch the movie over and over again for years, yeah, the revelation came to me. Martin Scorsese and everyone behind the movie were geniuses for the character development and small details that can be easily missed. I really hope Nas doesn't see himself as Ace, but hey, he's the only one. He's the only one that knows himself. I'll just chuckle if I continue to see more Ace Rothstein and inspirations from him. Lastly, the overt racism by Nicky and Ace. Nicky's name calling of Ace plus Middle Easterners, etc., was purely disgusting. Ace calling Ginger an Irish bee when he was furious regarding the tying up of Amy and leaving her alone. Listen, they were all terrible people and abusive in their own ways. Like I said in the beginning, they were greedy and selfish, but hey, that's what Vegas can do to you. There were no Goodfellas here. And that's that. Thank you all for waiting this one out. This was a lot to write and whatnot. I totally appreciate you guys. Don't mind the dishwasher in the back. But yeah, I appreciate everyone. I appreciate, the support, and like, comment, share, subscribe, run the likes up, whatever you can do to support the channel. I'm cool with. Once again, this is Welch's Thinking. I hope y'all all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, or day or night. Peace.